All right, 7:03, and you are live.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. Roll call. Mark Hogue is present. Steve McClintock.
Yes.
Brad Smith. Don Peterson.
Present.
Pete Johnson.
Present.
Brad Smith, are you able to hear us? Carrie, is he loaded up?
He's
Okay.
loaded up. Oh, now he's connecting again. Hold on one moment.
Okay.
He's connecting to audio.
He's like me. Another time or two. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it still shows that he's trying to connect. While you're going through it, I can find a number for him and reach out.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got a quorum. We'll go ahead and go. Also present is Steve Yurley. Everybody had a moment to read over last month's minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion. McClintock.
And a second
Second.
to approve them. Pete? Okay. I don't have any correspondence received. Is anybody aware of any other correspondence?
I know of none.
Hearing none, we'll move right along to new business. We have to look at, I've got several applications for electrical exam, restricted maintenance, limited residential, and some masters. Has everyone got a chance to look at them?
Yes.
I've looked over most of them, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I will tell you, Thomas Turner, TJ Turner, had applied for the last test. He was missing a couple things. There's some history there. He did get those to me tonight. He was having a problem. He was going to drop them off the city the other day, but couldn't get in because City Hall was closed. But he does have a letter I sent to Carrie. I don't know if she forwarded it to everybody or not. That a letter from the owner of Drogan's that says he's had worked there for 10 years or whatever it was, and had a multitude of electrical education classes and stuff through them. Also, he had worked with Nathan Place. He also worked with Craig Harvey, who both have licenses. The work he did with Craig was outside the city. But my feeling is he does meet limited residential criteria. Did anyone else have any other questions on any of the other gentlemen?
For what they're going for, they all seem to have enough accredited information,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned.
Carrie, Jared Ambrose was looking for a master electrician, and before the meeting started, I asked, I don't see any history or any background to fill his 5 years there, and maybe it was just because I missed it someplace, but all I saw was a letter similar to all the other gentlemen from Corning that were looking for a restricted maintenance license. Were you able to find anything, or did I miss something?
The other masters had an attachment which spoke more to their work history. I was able to find documentation from their human resources department that explains that he is an instrument technician who has been in his current role since April 28 of 2014. He has an associate's in electrical from SUNY Delhi and attended from 2011 to 2013. So I was able to find that verification from their HR department.
Okay. So I would think that with his education and time
he's got enough
working, and he would have worked under Les Milford there as their master electrician. He should have enough time to be able to sit. Okay. Did anybody else have any other questions on that?
Who was the person that needed to redo the test? What was it? The practical part of it? Did that ever take place or no? Or is that one of the people that's on this? Do you know?
He's not on the list. That was an employee from a business within the city limits, and
Right.
his name is honestly escaping me at the moment, but he does need to resit for the practical portion of the exam if he chooses to do so.
Right.
And I think we priorly approved him to sit for that if he so chose.
Right. I just didn't see his name, and I don't know if it needs to be on here, but we already approved anyways.
Yeah, they get the opportunity to sit for a second chance prior to it coming back to the board for reconsideration.
Okay. Does anybody have any objections to any of these people sitting for the test?
I do not.
Looking over there. Okay. Is it a motion that we approve them all to sit for the test?
I'll make a motion. McClintock.
Second
Motion by Steve, second by Pete. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? None. Any other new business to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll move on. Old business, I guess Vincent Coletti falls under that. At this time, we were waiting for some more information from the code office. So a motion to table that to our next meeting.
I'll make a motion. McClintock.
Second.
Steve. And the second was Brad.
Yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passed. That'll be tabled to next month's meeting until we get some more information that we're waiting on. Other discussions that we had, a journeyman exam. We've set this forward once before. Carrie, where were we at with that? It was supposed to go before the Common Council, and I think it kind of got dropped. Was anything more done with it? Do we just need to bring it up again? Because it was all set out at one time, I know. I think when Art Matucci was on the board, it was first arose, and we discussed doing that.
I find where there was a
said,
request for the journeyman testing, but I find nothing specific as to the form and fashion of the testing, which I'm 99.9% sure they're going to want a few more details before they move forward on it. My presumption would be that they would be interested in, is SUNY Delhi going to be performing this testing? What criteria, what type of testing are you looking at? Is practical, written, both?
Well, basically, I guess from my understanding when I was sitting in on the board meetings when this was brought up. Basically, as it stands now, is an apprentice he does his apprenticeship for the time. He doesn't have to show that he does any work. All he has to have is be covered under the licensed electrician for his period of time. He could be plowing snow for the entire time of his apprenticeship, or he can be driving around in a truck making deliveries. But as long as he was under that time for that period, the period of time required, he then automatically can apply for his journeyman's card. A journeyman allows him to work unsupervised on a job, still under his master electrician, but can be left unsupervised on the job to do work. And the problem was that they have shown no criteria. You know, you've got some electricians that obviously take their apprentices, their journeymen, and show them, but you get some of these big companies that come in and, you know, they just put guys on the books. And I think that's where it arose is a gentleman had said to Art, hey, look, I'm a journeyman and I plowed snow for 5 years. I've never done electric work a day in my life, but I'm a journeyman and technically I can go do something. So basically, I think what it was is we were going to talk to Delhi and see if they would just come up with a simple, written, practical kind of deal to show that you know the basics, that you're competent to be working alone, unsupervised, that you're no longer. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. In the past, it may have been the case that just simply proving the 4 years of employment as an apprentice was sufficient. But in recent, at least for the last 5 to 6 years, we require that they provide an equivalent of enough years in the field or an equivalent allowed for graduation from an accredited school of electrical training. There's also a section in there that requires that if for some reason there's an uncertainty as to their qualification, that they must go forward to the Board of Electrical Examiners for verification. The only time that that is waived is if they're part of a reciprocal license application. For example, they've got a journeyman or higher licensure in, I believe it's Broome County, Greene County, and Norwich. So we are requiring, they do have to show more proof. It's not just 4 years, because that was our concern. They could sit in an office for 4 years, and as long as their paycheck says XYZ electrical, then that would be deemed deficient. It's not, we don't do that.
Okay, so because that had been the way, that's why we had revisited this, because to become a journeyman, all you had to do is do your 4 years time as an apprentice. And basically, as long as it said Joe Schmo Electrical on your check and you showed that you had 40 hours a week for, 50 weeks for 4 years, didn't matter what you did. So then your office is making them show cause that they've done more, basically. Is that
built into our
my
code.
understanding?
Yes. So 112 sub 7, and then it's sub C, I believe, sets forward requirements that they can only be issued to persons who are qualified. They have to be reviewed if there are any questions, concerns, and that they have to have that 4 years of experience as an apprentice, not just employment, experience as an apprentice or the equivalent due to graduation or electrical training and years in the field to total those 4 years.
Okay, so my question goes back to the proof of that. So what do we say other than they come in and say, hey, listen, I worked, 40 hours a week for 50 weeks for Joe Schmo Electric. What other education are requiring them to do this? That's, I guess, where the original standpoint or the original airing of this question came up.
So we require them to meet that burden by providing us with information from either the person that licensed them as their master, or they're directed to provide information from the company. And it's a signed statement that indicates this is what this person was responsible for. He's worked for us for 5 years. I mean, if they say he helped us with the installation of services or whatever it is that electricians do beyond that, I'm very sorry, then great. But if they say, you know what, he handled our inventory, then no, that doesn't meet the criteria. And anytime there is any sort of question, it gets brought forward to either code enforcement or we would bring it forward to you.
Okay. that sheds a little new light on this, because that has not been how it had been handled for years. So that's kind of good to know. I guess, what is anybody's pleasure on this piece of discussion? What are we on?
I since I've been on the board, I believe that we actually sent it to the city, and the city just kind of backburnered it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know just when it was. Probably, I don't know how long I've been on here. Sometime after I first got on, I know that it was brought up and we sent it to the city, and I believe it just got tabled. And that may be because they were wondering what kind of criteria we were thinking for the exam. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else remembers or not.
I mean, so Kerry, basically, from my understanding, is if somebody comes in and just says they have a letter, then the clerk's office just goes ahead, because they have never, other than maybe recently I might have seen one or two, other than that, they've never come before the board. Is my understanding correct that if they come in with that letter, basically you guys, then they show 4 years, you guys just issue it, correct?
Prior to the implementation of the new code, correct. With the new code, it's a requirement that unless they're a reciprocal license from one of those jurisdictions under a master reciprocating in, then unless it's reciprocal, they have to come before you.
Okay, so that's fine, because
now, yeah, a journeyman now that someone's bumping, they've got their 4 years in, they've been under, say you're a licensed electrician in the city, Mark. You've got someone who's been under you for 4 years, they're ready to go for their journeyman. They have to be approved. But if you are licensed in the city of Binghamton and they're already a journeyman there, then they're automatically granted entrance because they have that reciprocal license from a qualifying jurisdiction.
Okay, so that's fine. So that was not how it used to be previously done. So I'm comfortable with that, because then it's going to go before the board, and they would show due cause as they've done with all the other, the guys that are looking for restricted maintenance, limited residential, master's license. They would have to show that. And if we had questions, what's the rest of the board's feeling on it?
As long as we feel that it's covered. I mean, I didn't realize that either, and that does help it a little bit, the cause we're looking for. What's everybody else think?
Is there any kind of like progresses, Don? Is there any kind of progression through their 4-year apprenticeship that shows, in year one I did basic electric theory and knowledge and that kind of thing, and that would be some kind of standard that they had to meet, the basic theory, or is that just an assumed thing that I worked for, this electric company and I was there 4 years or 5 years. And, now I want to go off on my own. The burden of proof would be that, electrical theory, AC motors, DC current, something to that effect. There's nothing in that standard.
No, there's nothing in the code that's specific to what type of experience they need to have, just that they need to demonstrate that 4 years, either combined in service or...
We're still here.
I'll second that.
The journeyman obviously is still covered under the master electrician, who's still supposed to be overseeing him. So basically, he's going to then vouch for that, which to me, I'm a little more comfortable with it the way it's set up now, because it did not used to be that way. And I know for a fact that there is journeymen, because when this first was brought up, that scurried to get their journeyman's card because they were afraid they would have to take a test and would not be able to pass a basic test. And if it would have went before the board, I'm fairly confident that the board would have said, you know what, you're not, competent enough to have a journeyman's card.
So I think if the the way that it's written, that some of the burden would come down on if somebody's applying for their journeyman's card, that whoever they've been working for is going to have to vouch for them, which brings a little I don't want to say liability, but responsibility back onto the electrician, the master that's had him as a journeyman or had him as an apprentice, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. What's everybody else's feeling? Do we want to just leave it the way it is for now, or do we want to do a little research and see if the college wants to do something with it or come up with some sort of? And, you know, I might say Nick Sinstack may have come up, or Matt House, one of them, may have come up with something back then, but I don't know. And I'm not sure what other municipalities to do, to be honest with you, but I can look into that as well. What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I think we can, if we can in the future look into things. Right now, it seems to be covered somewhat what the city feels comfortable with, and we can go from there, and we can see what the college may have set up or what they have, and that would have to be brought forward to the city, I guess, for approval.
So I'm just going to throw it out there. I know from the city's standpoint, anything that costs the city money right now, they will probably not be super excited to talk about.
Right. Yep.
I know that they were very like, how much are we paying for these electric tests? And what's the cost of, I mean, they're like, you know, fine tooth comb, like going over our budgets and like going over like cost expenditures. So I think we can look into it, but I think if it's going to be a you know, an additional cost, there's not going to be a ton of stomach for it at the moment.
All right, so I guess from what I'm hearing, we'll just leave it lay at this point because it does seem to be covered for what Carrie's saying. You know, so basically all of the movement would come before the board anyway. So if we had an issue, we could address it then. But I guess I'll continue to do some homework on it just for argument's sake to see what other places do and, you know, if the college had set anything up. Is there any other discussion on this topic?
Nope, I'm good at this time.
All right. Steve, I know last meeting you were going to address some inspector criteria. Did you want to go over that this month or no?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking for some direction. Like right now, you know, the city has a list of inspectors and it's kind of just this arbitrary, like, I mean, I don't want to say that on camera, I guess, well, it's being recorded, but we have a list that we basically are like, these are the inspectors you're allowed to use in the city. We don't really have a way to like kind of vet these inspectors or any sort of like, you know, basically people send us requests to do inspections. Like I have 2 of them right now, but we don't really have a system as to like how we add or take people off this list. Now I know in the past people have been taken off the list because they just weren't doing inspections, or we found that, you know, it's kind of a gross negligence. But I guess we're trying to figure out a way, or if the board has suggestions on how we should add to the list, you know, like what criteria should we be using to build this list out? Because, you know, as of now, it's just kind of a, yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's good. This person isn't good. So, you know, it would be good to have some sort of system or some way to kind of decide who is doing these inspections, and maybe a set of criteria as to like how we, you know, decide who can and can't do the inspections. Or I guess even if we should be doing
that. Well, I tend to agree with you, Steve. I think there needs to be some sort of criteria because obviously you and I have this conversation periodically that some things are not being done adequately. And I know in years past they've had problems, and inspectors have been taken off the list for gross negligence and whatnot. I know you could say going forward, you could require that the International Association, happens to be one of them, the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, requires or gives tests. They're a 1 and 2 family residential. They have I think it's a general, so it does commercial, does 1 and 2 family, does a whole bunch of, there's a series. So you could require that, any new inspectors are, wanting to get on the list would have to have something similar to that. It may not necessarily have to be the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, but something accredited similar to that. I know a lot of, because I deal with it through my office, a lot of municipalities require that. Because it's a baseline. Because fortunately or unfortunately, in the state of New York, there's very little of a requirement for an electrical inspector. So that's why a lot of the municipalities have gone with that. So you have a baseline show of knowledge. That, just Joe Schmo is not walking in off the street and saying, hey, I want to be an inspector. I've got insurance and, that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody else have any idea?
Mark, Don Peterson, what kind of accreditation does the, say if you're for Commonwealth or for what other inspection firm, what is that criteria for those firms to have people, doing inspections and holding that certificate for that, institution being liable for, because that's what we always go by as the utility, that it's, hey, if the Commonwealth is going to be issuing that permit, then if something happens, the liability is back on the Commonwealth. It's not on the utility type thing. So what kind
Correct.
of criteria is the utility or the Commonwealth or the inspection agency holding their employees, up for training and a certification type thing?
Well, I will say, from my experience, quite a few of the companies don't require anything like that. They want basically a list of, your knowledge or your resume. Basically, it shows. But I mean, I know there's companies that, hey, basically you work for the phone company for 10 years. Okay, you could be an inspector. You have no idea, about, 1 and 2 phase power, nothing about, anything, theory. I mean, yeah, you can hook the phone up. But I know there are some companies out there that they have very little to no criteria. Basically, if you put in an application, they'll hire you. They may have some in-house training. And then there's other companies that are very strenuous. They require you have within a certain time frame, if not already, the International Association of Electrical Inspectors testing done, or so many years in the field as an electrician. Like we're required to do continuing education all the time through my company. Code updates. I mean, I think there's companies out there, because I know some of them come to our code update classes, that, they're not necessarily required. The code changes roughly every 6 years. This last did not. It was out of the 6-year cycle when we adopted the 17. So it is difficult. And I run into it because I work in 4 different counties with multiple municipalities. And I know through my company that I work with, a lot of the municipalities they work with require a baseline and like I said, I use the International Association of Electrical Inspectors because it's widely known. So that's what most municipalities go with. You know, authority having jurisdiction says, hey, listen, if you want to inspect here, this is what we want you to have.
I mean, what if we set it up so that inspectors that wanted to come do inspections in the city had to put an application to the electrical board, just like the electricians? Like, what if we just, you know, what if we sorted them that way?
I mean, I would have no problem with it. I don't know what the rest of the board, you know, what their feeling is. You know, I mean, Steve, obviously, you know, you're the authority having jurisdiction. We're more than happy to help you because obviously our whole point of the board is to make things safer and, you know, streamline in the city, which I think between the board and the code officer has done a good job compared to a lot of other places. But, you know, that's something that you would like us to do. I mean, I think that we can certainly look into it.
I think it would just be, I mean, we do it for our electrical applicants. I mean, I'm just trying to come up with a way that we can make a process to vet these inspection companies. Because right now we have a pretty limited list. And if people die, you know, we had a guy die that was on it. Well, you know, we don't have a very good mechanism for putting people on the list other than me being like, yeah, sure, why not? And if that's what we're doing, then it gets hard to say, well, then why aren't these companies that can work in the town on our list? Why isn't anybody? Like,
well, it's no different than applying for any kind of job. I have a resume. This is what I've done. These are my qualifications. This is what I do. And that kind of thing should be, if anybody's proud of what they've done in their life, then they're going to come up and they're going to say, this is what I've done. This was my training, my experience. You know, I was in the Navy, electrician. I did this, I did that, you know. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think it's short of expecting any kind of electrician or inspecting agency or a contractor that you hire to tell you what they've done and how they can help you.
Right.
That should be a standard.
And we get those applications. A lot of the inspection companies will send us. They'll be like, this is you know, Joe Blow. He works for us. Here's his resume. Here's his. And when we get those, I have one sitting on my desk right now. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is maybe we should just forward these to the electrical board and we can review them and that we can establish a process of, you know, that way it's not just me looking at these applications and saying, yeah, sure, we can, you know, we can establish like a kind of a process to how we do it.
Yeah, and you should be able to call SUNY Delhi or SUNY Morrisville or, you know, somebody down in New York City and request some kind of, you know, we have an applicant. He says he went to your school. Is this factual? You know, and you can say A student, B student. They should be able to tell you that. Maybe there's some kind of privacy act or something that's going to limit that too, but that seems to be the way anymore. But
I kind of agree with Steve Early. We should have at least a criteria of some sort. You know, just a basic. They at least give them a list of things that's required, and then we could, you know, if they're missing a couple of them or something like that, maybe it's a red flag. I don't know. That's just an idea.
I think you guys, I think yeah, you're coming up with a good idea to set at least a baseline that they apply, and if they know that it's coming before the electrical board, it might, as you might say, weed some out, knowing that they're going to have to be approved.
yeah,
More than just then putting all the liability on Steve, you know, to say, yeah, okay, yeah, you can come in and inspect. I know where he's coming from. You want somebody else to help him say yes.
Well, something that covers everybody's behind on the whole thing.
So the electrical board review these is you can't be like, well, I'm buddies with Steve and I get to inspect here, and some guy that pissed me off doesn't get to inspect here because I'm not buddies with Steve. I think it would kind of give us,
Yeah.
a little more,
Yes.
a little less
Yeah.
Steve says yes and no.
Right. Yeah. I know where you're coming from. You want somebody else to join in on the liability or whatever you want to say.
Well,
Approving somebody. So,
yeah,
and I think that's not bad.
So,
And I mean, well, Don deals with several different, organizations or companies, and sees obviously the pros and the cons of things. So, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. The other thing is, I would say, hey, listen, give me 3 municipalities that you work in, so I can or a letter from those municipalities, because obviously, Steve, you got guys that you've had problems with. If a municipality called and said, hey, would you allow this guy to inspect in your municipality again? I bet you probably wouldn't tell them yes. And I would think that most municipalities that have an issue with somebody would not give them a reference to say, yeah, hey, this guy's great, and indeed he is not. But yeah, I definitely think that it's something the board, we could sit down and try to set up some sort of criteria to meet.
well, with anything, there needs to be some kind of limit, as the minimal acceptable, some kind of achievement or something.
Yeah, I would tend to agree there. That it just keeps everything streamlined. Like Steve said, it's not, hey, I know this guy, I like the guy, or I don't like this guy, or, it's, hey, you meet the criteria, just like we do with, the electricians and everything else, So I guess maybe at our next meeting, if you guys want to kind of think about some ideas, we'll see what we can kind of come up with for some sort of criteria for
For
new inspectors into the city.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then we'll kind of hash it out, I guess, our next meeting. Is there any other discussion on this topic? All right. Steve, did you have anything else?
That's what I was just going to ask if he liked what we discussed or whatever.
No.
Is he still there?
Yes.
Okay.
No, Steve Yeardley still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Carried.
Oh,
Okay.
So does that sound
Did
good?
you have anything else?
I'm good. Obviously,
Okay,
90 million, but I'm still waiting to hear back on that.
Yeah, we decided we were going to table that 97 Elm to our next meeting because we needed you were waiting to hear some more information that we needed.
Right.
There. So that'll be our next meeting unless something pressing comes up and we have to call a special meeting. Carrie, when is the test slated for now in January?
Let me confirm the date because given the day, it's a different day for me. So, electrical exam is announced for Saturday, January 9th. And the application deadline passed as of Monday. So that was the final day.
Okay. Okay, so we have everything in at this point. The gentlemen that we have in are done. So we should not need to meet again before the test. Am I correct?
Correct. We'll need you after the test results are received, so the results can be certified and letters can be sent. But we shouldn't need anything, at least on our end, prior to that.
So we need to do a February meeting?
He's pretty quick about it. I mean, honestly, we generally have results within a week. So even if you wanted to do the end of January,
Are we sticking with our second Thursday of the month or not?
Well, if we go to second Thursday of the month, that's not going to give us enough time, I don't think. That would be, because the second Thursday would be the 14th, so we may not. I would go.
Yeah, February? Or do you
no, because we want to do it.
Get them
Let's
certified.
do it fairly quick. How's the 28th? The 21st or the 28th, either one of them.
28th, there's going to be a conflict with 2 other scheduled meetings. So public meeting wise, the 21st would be easier and less of a conflict.
Okay. Does that work for everybody? January 21st for our next meeting?
Fine by me.
Yes.
Anybody have a conflict? Okay. All right, so we'll do that. Is there anything else come before the board this evening? Hearing no other business. Hearing no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion. McClintock.
And a second?
Second, Smith.
Second, Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7:44. All right. I think we are good. You can go ahead and turn